plan.
I thought that when it says
looked a little bit
2021
weird,
on
yeah.
there. Okay. Yeah,
Let's see. I'm not sure where I put this. There it goes. So a little background about the Internal Audit Department. Back in 1995, it was established by a board resolution, a charter, and an audit committee. And shortly after 9/11, it was rescinded to have the Finance and Business Committee oversee the audit function. And it has two purposes. One is to provide input to the audit plan, as well as to approve the audit plan. Typically, our purpose has been to be a revenue auditor, to make sure that the parking, ground transportation, rental cars, food, anything that's bringing revenues to the airport is being reported to us correctly, and that we're receiving the money that we should receive. In addition, we will look at compliance with contracts, agreements, policies, internal controls. We'll look at achievement of the strategic goals, provide analysis and appraisals, and perform special projects. So over the last fiscal year, I have been providing a continuous parking audit. I performed an SSP, which is one of our concessionaires, a true-up audit. I helped as a special project with the Hertz DTAG, the bankruptcy, the cure amount, and have been performing year-end reconciliations for our concessionaires and providing Muni support, which is our financial management systems. For this next fiscal year, I'd like to perform a P-card audit. I would like to continue our continuous parking audit program and also provide an IT user access controls audit, which is kind of on a cybersecurity level, trying to determine that people have access to what they need to have access to. Would you like anything added, or do you have any questions about the audit plan?
Well, it's interesting you're doing the user audit because when you change over to systems, a lot of times it's tricky. Either people get too much, or if they don't get enough, you hear about it, but when they have too much, you don't hear about it.
You're right.
So, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so with that, it's recommended that the Finance and Business Development Committee approve the audit plan for this upcoming fiscal year.
Have any questions? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the plan as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second, item 4.2 is the overview of the financial model on Concourse redevelopment project, and we have Mr. Carlton here.
Good morning, Treasurer Gianoli. Welcome to the position. I'd like to thank Jennifer Rose for her service as treasurer this past year. We would like to take a few minutes to talk about financial modeling. As you know, we've had these ongoing conversations and discussions internally and with our consultant team and with the airlines about our future as it pertains to our capital improvement program, a list of projects. The centerpiece of that currently of our focus and discussion is the Concourse redevelopment project. And this modeling is, well, it's a word that we use to help us understand how forecasted cost will impact the key metrics of the airport. Is a project affordable? Is the bottom line question that we're trying to answer. And so we're going to go over a few things about this modeling that we'd like to discuss with you as a precursor to some of our upcoming conversations. We have a plan that begins next week of meeting with airline headquarter representatives to discuss the Concourse redevelopment project. This will be a feature of that conversation. And we also want to just give you a heads up that we will be back to the Finance Committee and Board in September with a deeper dive into the project itself. And we'll have the consultant team, Mead and Hunt, here. We'll have staff here as well, and we'll talk about those elements, the project itself. So if I could ask you to keep your powder dry in terms of questions about all the wonderful, exciting things that this project will bring forward to the airport. I don't want to steal the thunder from that team's presentation next month. So well, this is the picture you've seen before, the graphic of the different projects that we have in mind for RNO over the coming years. And I won't go into any detail here. This is just to give you a layout of what we're building in the financial model. The one exception I would probably carve out would be the CONRAC structure. That is a P3 development. So all of those costs, all of those revenue assumptions are not in the financial model, with the exception that we do anticipate additional revenue in the form of parking, which is a factor in our future modeling. Guiding principles, and I open this up for discussion. Should there be something else that should be added to this list from your perspective? We would welcome that type of feedback, but want to provide you some of the thinking that goes into our assumptions in the financial modeling. We believe that having a diversified and robust set of assumptions of how we are going to pay for this capital project is a prudent direction for the authority. So we've come forward with not only airline revenues towards this project, but our non-airline revenues. And the non-airline revenues are, the concession revenues derived from car rentals, from our parking operations, from food and beverage and other concessions. We're also going pretty much all in with our federal fund strategy of obtaining as much bill funding as we possibly can. We are active with our legislative advocate, and we'll be approaching our legislative delegation, which we've already done, and the CEO can, I'm sure, has briefed you on some of those key stakeholder meetings that we've already had and had some good feedback. We anticipate having a good down payment from our PFC funds that we've collected towards the cost of the project at the onset, as well as pledging our future PFCs towards the debt service. So all this means to us is that we're bringing forward a lot of skin in the game, and that is something that is very important for us to demonstrate, particular to the feds, that although there is no requirement for obtaining federal funding, it does make a better case when an airport demonstrates that their project is not solely dependent upon an award of federal funds, that we are bringing forward funding to also help with that project. Prudent use of debt, by that I mean we have more to do here at RNO than just the concourse project. And so we have to preserve our debt capacity to pay for those other projects that were on that initial graphic. We also do not want to be so constrained to paying debt that it really deprives us from some of the decisions that we make of how we intend to grow the operating budget side of the equation. We've learned that airports that are so constrained by debt are so handcuffed that they have to put all in on their paying their debt, but yet we also have an obligation to pay for our ongoing operations, and that's our labor, that's the expenses to run the airport. Investment grade quality, that is our goal. We want to have a single A rated or better bond issue when that time comes. That will provide us with the lowest cost of borrowing, and from a long-term perspective, interest does add up. And so if we can keep our investment, if our credit rating as high as possible, we'll have a lower borrowing cost. In this long-term financial plan that we are building, and it's a complex series of Excel workbooks and calculations and formulas, we won't forget that we have to be cost conscious when developing these assumptions. We know that we offer a product, and that product needs to be competitive. It needs to be a product where the airlines say yes to RNO when they make choices about flights and destinations. So we are very mindful to that principle of being cost competitive. All right, now I'm going to get into some of the details of how we're going to finance the concourse project and where the funding is going to come from. This first segmented pie chart shows you the cost estimate of the concourse redevelopment project, and it says $520 million, and that's the high end of a range. The earlier slide said we're using conservative assumptions. Well, we're going to err on this side of being at the high end of the cost range. That range is $470 million to $520 million. So in our modeling, we're using that higher number. And you could see from the illustration of this pie chart a couple of things. The cost and where it's going to be paid for. 76% of the funding of the financing of this project will come from general airport revenue bonds. That's our bread and butter form of borrowing as an airport. The other funding sources, you can see we have some allocations of bill grants, entitlements, the airport terminal project bucket of grants from Bill, as well as some EIP discretionary, because some of the apron work that's being conducted here is an eligible project. And PFCs, that's the down payment that I mentioned before of funds that we will have collected and will use towards the initial cost of the construction. The operational dates off to the right, that becomes important because we can only charge debt service to the airlines and terminal concessionaires that as the project becomes operational. And you'll see that illustration as we talk about the debt service. All right, a little bit more detail on just the debt service and where the money is going to come from on an annual basis. And there's some compelling information here that I'd like to speak to. Those 2 points there, 39% airline R&C, that's rates and charges, 61% non-airline rates and charges. This helps us get to yes with the airlines when they see that they are not, that the debt service for this project is not entirely on their backs. And so we believe that we have a very compelling case to make with the airlines to garner their support for this project, where only 39% is going to come from the fees that they pay directly. All right, so in terms of the debt service, and I mentioned earlier those operational dates, and when we start charging debt service, you see here more clearly when those debt service obligations come online. And with the first phase in fiscal year 28, you can see that our debt service goes up to $16.5 million, and then with phase 2, when it becomes operational, it goes up to $32.1 million. And that's when we're fully built out of those projects that we have in the pipeline. And I'm going to put that into some context in a moment in terms of that question I laid out there initially about what is affordable. I think that's a very important thing for us to get our arms around. All right, so there are other projects, of course, other than the concourse project, and some of those projects will be debt financed, and we want to give you the total picture of what we have in our financial model from a debt service standpoint. And again, you see that ramping up as different projects come online. You could see that we have included in there the ticketing hall, the CUP, which is our centralized utility plant, which is the heart of driving all of the utilities needed for the new concourse. We have our other projects that are incorporated into the More R&O program, the RTAA headquarters and the mezzanine repurposing project, as well as some landside projects in the 2 phases of the concourse. So the takeaway here is that $41.1 million is what we're forecasting to be the all-in debt service when we're done. All right, some context. CPE, that's the cost per in-plane passenger. That's the key metric that airports look to when they talk about affordability, when they talk about competitiveness. And we've done a couple of things here. One, these are the outputs of what the CPE is forecasted to be in the coming years as we bring these projects online. But it also brings that cost estimate into the current year dollars and adjust for inflation, so you have a better understanding of making a decision today what those dollars look like when adjusted for inflation. And that's represented by that gray bar aside the blue bar. I do have some comparison data here on this next slide. When we look at all other medium hub airports, the goldenrod color is RNO. That coincides with a few different points in time. The one towards the bottom, that's fiscal year 2023 budgeted CPE of $7.47. The one about midway through is upon the completion of phase 1, and in our forecast, we're anticipating CPE to be approximately $12.06. And when we're fully built out with both phases, we anticipate our CPE in fiscal year 2030 to be approximately $20.30. Those are non-adjusted numbers for inflation, but you can see along the left-hand column there are other airports there. Even once we're fully built out at a CPE of $20.30, we're still less than Sacramento, where they are currently. And, well, we're below PDX as well. So, but I think this is perhaps helpful for to address that question of context and affordability. I'd like to stop and take any questions.
I just want to clarify one thing. Oh, I'm sorry, which Jennifer? You. Last names, please. So would that mean that we would be really, though, near the very highest at that point? Or
we will be I would say, in the higher bracket, but keep in mind all these other airports, their costs are going to go up too between now and 2030.
that was my clarifying question. Yeah. We don't really know where they'll be. That's just where they are today.
Right. There are some here. You could see the years to the left there, where there is a forecasted number. So with PDX, that forecast is fiscal year 2027, that they're forecasting to be $24.33. We don't know what it will actually be.
Okay.
We don't know what ours is going to actually be. This is, this is all a forecast, and forecasts are not perfect. And I'm going to talk about the need to be, our sensitivity analysis in that regard, because we know we're not going to get it 100% right. And
so these prices up here are not their actual prices today for other airlines, other airports. They're actually forecasted numbers for them as well.
That is correct.
Okay, that was my clarifying.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is fascinating to see it in context with a little bit of flexibility and estimation. Looking at this, is this something that Randy, you and CEO Darren falls in a comfortable threshold? Is there a concern? Is it a relief? Like, oh, phew, I thought it might be worse?
I would like to start with answering the question, and imagine CEO Griffin would want to respond as well. I think it's a very competitive starting point. And when asking the question, is CPE reasonable, it's often depending upon who you ask, type of question. We believe it's reasonable because we know where our leakage might occur, and that is Sacramento, and we can demonstrate that we're more competitive than them. But if an airline wants to make the case that we want to do something different with their schedule, they will do so, and perhaps even point to the cost per plane passenger. I'm just speaking off the cuff, but we believe that what we're offering, especially the amount of money that we're bringing forward to keep the costs down, is a reasonable case for us to make. And the airlines have been supportive. of what we've brought forward so far. And they recognize that it's not entirely on their back. Where some of these other airports, you talk about a terminal project, hey, that's being picked up and the cost of is borne 100% by the rents paid for that terminal. We're bringing in other revenues. We're bringing in, parking and concession revenues to help with that debt service. So, CEO Griffin, if you'd
Sure.
like to address that as well.
Great question, and it's one that will be asked many times, I'm sure. So, I'm comfortable with the chart. Bottom line is that we want to be competitive, and context is everything here. So this is our FY23, the budgeted number that the board approved. In our actual for FY21-22, I think we are coming in below $6. There are very few airports in America that are as cheap as we are. We are a great deal for the airlines, and they generate a great profit here. So that's a great starting point for us, that we have no debt and we're low cost. And as we rise up and we're running with a pack here, we want to be competitive, and that's what the airlines want, that they want us to be competitive. Nobody wants to be the most expensive the most expensive airport in America, and that's why I left that airport. No, I'm kidding. That's a $2 billion capital program up at the top, and to get airline approval for that, they have forecast their CPE out to the late decade. There's a lot of these other airports are going to have to be updating their numbers, and nobody's numbers go down ever. They don't. So we're competitive. We're running with a pack, and these slides that you are seeing here, I'm doing this a little bit backwards because I wanted you to see the slides that we're sharing with the airlines next week, because money is what everybody cares about. Everybody's going to love the project. We've worked hard at what we showed you at the retreat. We've got an even better concept, and it's easy to like new concourses. The question is, how are you paying for them? And that's why this is going to be the crux to the conversation next week, and we wanted you to see it. So Randy's got some more slides, but generally at the front end of this, I was more concerned we would be way north of this, and in looking at numbers we just really couldn't tolerate. And so as this process has gone along, it's gotten better, and I'm actually pretty pleased with where we're at, that we are going to be competitive. And that, yeah.
Just one more quick question. When you're projecting this, are you using the high end of the 520 in
Yes.
that? Okay,
Yeah,
so this is the worst case scenario.
Exactly. There's a range of 470 to 520, and we factored in 520.
Trustee Rose.
Just one more quick question, because I don't want to ask it on Thursday. So clearly we're going from being one of the lowest priced airports to one of the highest priced. So clearly it would be better if we could stay in that $15, $16 pack, which I hope we'll get there. But I'm just wondering, when you present to the airlines, because I don't know or understand how those conversations go, if they approve this, will they give you feedback as to whether it might change the way they feel about adding flights? Or just because they approve something doesn't mean it won't have an effect on us. So I'm just wondering, how in depth do these conversations get about, if you approve it, how might it impact us?
If an airline really strongly feels that it's not the right project, or that it's simply too expensive for the airport, they will go to that and they'll connect those dots and say, we might have to reduce our flying because you're going to be so expensive. We have not heard that from any of them locally, and I think if we were going to hear that in the headquarters meetings, we would know that already, and generally we're getting the green light that you have a good product. This is a strong message. We support the process, and we will talk more about the process and the airline engagement. And generally, over the course of my experience in this business, when they tell you that, it's still not true, because they are different parts of the airline. The properties people job is to keep airport costs as low as they possibly can, and the network people's job is to generate revenue on routes, and they don't care about hold rooms and things like that. So it's kind of like dealing with the FAA, where one part of the FAA cares a lot about something and the other part doesn't care at all. And we as the airport have to reconcile all that. At the end of the day, we want them all to be happy, and to present a product to them that they can just generally support. And these are averaged CPE numbers. The CPE for every airline is different based on their cost model in every airport. And airports never usually know exactly what an airline CPE is. They don't share it, but we average it out for all customers. And that's the numbers that you see on the board here. We won't know for sure, but you know, generally we're looking for general support. That if they really don't like it, then we're not really where we need to be. We're looking for that. Yep, we understand you're going to get more expensive. We understand we need more capacity in Reno, and we need more modern facilities. And we're cheap right now because we've not made that generational investment. And a lot of other airports have been making investments or are now. And the airlines know that it goes together. When you make that investment, their costs go up, but it's a better customer experience. It allows them more capacity to turn planes faster or turn more planes. And that's where the profit is for an airline. Yeah.
Not to belabor it, and I think this is perfect for your your airline meetings, because they totally understand it. I'm just looking at it, and it almost feels a little misleading, because it's so easy to, you know, your eye goes to that FY30 for RNO at $20, but that's being compared. There's no other year, fiscal year 30 up there. And so if you go down to fiscal year 28, that's more comparing to the years with the other airports. So I'm reminding myself to just kind of keep that in mind. So it's not as if we're in the top 3.
Good point. And the only reason ours is 30 is because we're modeling the completion of the second concourse, and when you borrow that money, it would then hit our rate base in fiscal year 2030. So Randy and team have modeled us all the way out there. Everybody else is going to catch up with their programs, and they're going to be modeling 2030. So you're right in that it's almost disproportionate. We look a little worse than we probably really are in 2030, but we don't know what anybody else will be doing then. We're just trying to be super transparent. We probably need to make that point with the airlines, that you're getting a 2030 number that you're not seeing from others yet, but we want you to know exactly where we expect to be and make sure that, you know, you can't say you were surprised or blindsided or that you think we're overreaching with a program.
Just because you understand it well, so since PDX has already done their big remodel, would you then anticipate that they wouldn't have any large hikes for the next how many years? Like, because they're clearly not going to do another big one in the near future, right? So how does an airline or an airport not doing any large remodel projects, do they normally go up 5%? Like, I don't understand how that really works. Do they have to catch up for what they've already spent? Or we anticipate that theirs wouldn't move very much?
Yeah, it depends on enplanement growth. So they're modeling whether or not they expect passengers to grow or not. And if they're growing, their CPE should go down theoretically. Now, everybody's O&M costs are going up, and that's part of this as well. The cost of labor, the cost of utilities, nobody's numbers are going down. So that's pushing numbers up as well. And then you layer in the debt. And so for PDX's example, their program should complete, I think, in the summer of 25. So all of their debt hits their rate base in 27. That's why they have a 2027 number there. Their number should factor in O&M inflationary growth. So that's probably where they're hoping to hold it for a while. But if we went through and looked at the capital programs that each of these airports has, plenty of them have debt that's yet to hit their rate base. And none of us know what inflation will do in the years ahead. Generally, it's modeled around 3%, I think, as a general rule, not 8. So, you know, it's hard to say. But this is as apples as we can really get at this point in the program. But the airlines look at this stuff all day, every day in their properties group, and they know it as well as we do.
Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, just one more slide. As I indicated earlier, the financial modeling is not perfect, and in fact, I would even characterize it as being far from perfect. It's based upon assumptions, and we know that things change. Cost estimates, as they bid the projects, can come in higher than expected. They can come in lower. It's a economic condition too. If contractors are more hungry for the work, they'll bid more competitively. If the labor is there for their pricing to be more affordable, then they'll pass that through in the bids that public agencies see. So we have to build in some ranges here of what things, what things could happen. Costs could change. Enplanement forecasts could change. You know, we have a 1.5 a 2.1% compounded annual growth rate assumption built into the model. And that results in a CPE of $15.78. And this is adjusted for $23, implies that once everything is built out. We want to just be as transparent as possible when it comes to accepting the unknowns, that there is volatility in any long-term forecast, and the key drivers of cost and revenue are here in this table, and that's the cost of construction and the revenue derived from our passenger growth. So we're illustrating the impacts of what that has on CPE with different level of assumptions. So, we share this with you. We also will share this with the airlines. And that's really all the information I wanted to present. We've had a great discussion, good feedback from the committee. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I just have one quick follow-up. Are you meeting with the numbers people on next week, or the people who just like to do things and don't care what it costs?
Well,
I know those people.
We are not meeting with accounting, and if that's what you mean, but their corporate property executive leadership, they're the ones that really try to wring every dollar out of the airport and really vet, is an airport building what an airline thinks it needs. What benefits us is we've had a very robust process of airline engagement, and when we get into the details of the concourse redevelopment, it reflects a lot of their input and what they really feel like they need for facilities, and that really helped move the needle, and that is a huge selling point, along with our efforts to the winning slide in this deck is the share of the debt that hits their rate base, and it's 39%, if memory serves me correctly, and I've almost memorized all these slides. That is a very, very powerful message for them to see that we're doing everything we can to put our own skin in the game and be cost competitive. And so we're trying to make this as easy as possible for them to say, we agree with you. My ultimate goal is to have them speaking in support of this when we present it for your board approval. And that's the litmus test. That will an airline say anything publicly that supports spending money at an airport? Yes, they will. Whether or not we achieve that, I don't know yet, but that's my goal.
Well, you'll get good feedback, I'm sure. That'll be, but
For
I
sure.
do agree that the skin in the game is always, you just feel more that you're invested in it significantly, so you're not just have
Absolutely.
your hand out. So thank you, Brandy. That was
Welcome.
very informative.
Thank you for the
Anybody,
feedback.
one more for
I just want to
trustee?
say I appreciate all the work that went into this. You showed us 4 simple slides, and I can only imagine the amount of work that went into it. And it makes me feel very comfortable as a trustee that so much due diligence has been done in anticipation to prepare for the funding.
I would agree.
Thank you for that feedback. And it truly is a team effort. We have both internal staff. We have Alex Kovach in the audience, who is a key member to the behind the scenes on our financial modeling, along with our consultant team led by Jeff Schultness, who's not here today. But definitely appreciate the feedback, and we'll look forward to providing you with some feedback once we're done with the airline meetings and discuss the project more next month. So thank you for your time.
Very much.
One more quick.
Oh, trustee
Just have
Rose,
one more point of clarification, just to be sure. Those last 2 slides that we looked at, do they include all of the projects, not just the concourse project?
Yes, that
Okay,
was
so that's
as
the
of
price after
20
we've done everything we've planned, the ticketing hall, everything.
correct. That
Okay.
was, those numbers were as of fiscal year 2030, which is our build out. First year of the
Well, the last slide said, 520, 470, which sounds like the prices of just the concourse. So I just was trying to make sure that those slides I was looking at included the cost of all of the projects. But I think what you're saying is you already have the funding planned for the other ones, so that's the one that will impact at that time. Is that?
We're showing the CPE that's inclusive of all the projects.
Everything. Okay.
The bar charts have everything broken out. Everything in the more R&O program. So it's the ticket hall, it's the landside work we've talked about doing, everything, because they ask the exact same question. It's like, okay, that's just the concourses. What else you got that we might have to pay for?
Pay for, exactly.
So we have to be very transparent and all in. This is everything we know to be true. And in 5 years, who knows how much of it will be true. But where we stand today, it's everything that we're aware of, and we accounted for the cost.
That's what I thought, but when I saw the 470, I thought maybe I was misunderstanding. So I just wanted to make sure. And also, thank you very much for your hard work on this.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, we will move on to item 5, items recommended for approval by the full board. First item, Board Memo 8-2022-54, authorization for the President and CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 5-year non-exclusive automated teller machine concession license with the 2-year extension options for ATM services with Bomb Tech LLC at the Reno Tahoe International Airport with a minimum estimated contract value of $400,000. And the presenter is Shauna Carpenter.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, Trustees, CEO Griffin. I'm Shauna Carpenter, Concessions Manager, and as you are now aware, I'm before you to present our recommendation for ATM services. The purpose of this action, as you just heard, is to execute a 5-year non-exclusive ATM license with two-year extension options for ATM services with Bomb Tech LLC for a minimum estimated contract value of $400,400, and this is in support of strategic priorities 5 and 6. A little bit of background here. Wells Fargo has managed the ATMs at R&O since July 1st of 2013. Their initial 5-year term for the Wells Fargo license expired in June of 2018. They did exercise both 2-year options as part of their agreement, which brought the final expiration to July 30th of 2022. They have been in month-to-month holdover since then. In preparation for the expiration of the Wells Fargo agreement, we did issue the first of 2 ATM RFPs in February of this year. The initial RFP received 2 proposals. However, one was deemed non-responsive from Golden Paradise, as it did not include or acknowledge the required addendum. And the evaluation committee comprised of RTAA staff members from commercial business, marketing and public affairs, operations, and finance believed it was in the best interest of the RTAA to reject the single responsive proposal from Bomb Tech and go back to the market with another RFP in the intent of receiving additional proposals or responses. The second RFP was issued in May. This one received 3 proposals. 2 were deemed non-responsive. Those 2 were from Euronet USA and Wells Fargo. Both deemed non-responsive were due to the lack of a surety bond, which was required to be submitted with the proposal. In addition, Wells Fargo's proposal also lacked the acknowledgement of the posted RFP addendum. So Bomb Tech, again, was deemed responsive to the RFP requirements, and the evaluation committee moved forward with an interview. To review the minimum qualifications and the differences between the 2 RFPs, as you see here on the left side, these were the qualifications in both RFPs that is demonstrating the ability to successfully operate an ATM network of at least 25 ATM machines that together generate at least $500,000 in annual gross revenue over at least 3 years, and preferably in a high volume location such as a mall, airport, or other location comparable in size and complexity to R&O. The minimum acceptable financial offer to the RTAA of no less than $110,000 per year, and to operate at least 4 ATMs. As you see the revisions there on this right-hand side, the second solicitation issued in May was revised to expand on the ability for proposals to include a lower proposed annual fee or minimum annual guarantee, MAG, or a combination of the MAG and revenue share without being disqualified, although we did still include the $110,000 as preferred. The flexibility with the proposed fee structures was based on the recent national shift to more cashless transactions. However, as we know here at Reno, the gaming concession results in a higher usage of ATMs compared to other airports and venues due to the nature of gaming's cash-based transactions. And to maintain a concession fee, but also to maintain a low transaction fee as to not impact that gaming revenue. We also elaborated a bit on the need to have a local presence or service agreement to respond to any issues and service the ATMs quickly. Moving on to some specifics about BOMTech, the recommendation to execute the agreement with BOMTech is based on a number of factors. The main ones are outlined here, and that is that they currently have a presence in over 34 states, a network of over 700 ATMs in operation. They process over 2.4 million transactions annually, which is an average of over 200,000 per month. And they have a history of financial stability and growth. Their current operations span across the public sector in airports, transit facilities, and major hospitals. And the airport references they provided did speak very highly of them. BOMTech is working to partner with a local financial institution for ATM branding. You can see an example of what it might look like in the meantime. They will be branded with MetaBank as BOMTech's established partner and financial institution sponsor bank until a local partnership is established. The fiscal impact, again, this is for a 5-year license with two-year options, a transaction surcharge not to exceed $3.50 per withdrawal, and revenue share to the RTAA of 45% of BOMTech's transaction revenue. The minimum annual guarantee will be established in year 2, and like all of our other agreements that do have a MAG, it's based on 85% of the revenue for the preceding year. And year 1 is, as you see on the right here, for the estimated contract value. The estimate on the top there for year 1 is based on that 45% concession fee. Year 2 through 5, starting with year 2, based on 85% of that for the estimated MAG. Of course, this can fluctuate depending on their actual performance, but for the purposes of providing an estimated contract value, we have the total there at $400,400. With that, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees authorize the President and CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 5-year non-exclusive automated teller machine concession license with two 2-year extension options for ATM services with BOMTech LLC at the Reno Tahoe International Airport with a minimum contract value of $400,400.
It's interesting that there was so little interest. And I would think on the front end, the dollars involved in that, the $500,000 of guaranteed, I can see that might have scared some people away, but I would have thought when you revised it. But I don't know, ATMs maybe aren't as big of a deal as they once were, but interesting.
We did survey other peer airports and found that many, shouldn't say many, a lot are going towards no fee associated with their ATM contracts and offering it as more of a customer service amenity. We, with gaming, really have Vegas to compare to, and
different. What if they don't get a banking relationship? That's not really a big deal. That's more just to give local branding to it.
Right,
Okay.
and they are prominently branded with ATM, so it's not too concerning if they don't. Their goal is definitely to establish just for that brand recognition and kind of a balance of ATM transactions.
Any other questions from? If there's no other questions, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
On to item 5.2, Board Memo 8/2022-55, authorization for the President, CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 9-month commercial hangar and ground lease and execute a 2022 special event license with Reno Air Racing Association, Inc., located at the Reno Stead Airport for a total combined minimum contract value of $192,672. And we have Adam Tennant here. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Chair, trustees, CEO Griffin. For the record, Adam Tennant, General Aviation Property Specialist, and happy to be bringing this item with two purposes today. First, the commercial hangar and ground lease for RARA up at Stead, and second, for their event license for the September air races. And this supports strategic priority number 2, encourage general aviation growth at both airports. So for some background, there's a lot of background on RARA the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. In May of 2021, as we thought we were kind of coming out of COVID, which here we are, I don't know, but we gave them their most recent 1-year lease and license so they can hold the event and continue to lease their property up at Stead. As part of that, we had a final COVID relief package. Most of that was applied to the 2021 event, but we do have a little bit that in the amount of $41,667 that we'll collect from them for this year. And we don't anticipate anything else going forward with that, of course. And we kind of thought we were doing pretty well up until early May. We typically would have brought both the license for PRS and for the NCAR September races and their lease all together in May. But shortly before the board meeting, we discovered that we were unable to obtain the additional excess insurance that we usually provide on RARA's behalf for the September air races. And that caused a couple of issues, and that's why this is a little disjointed this year. We went back to RARA and asked that they try to obtain the insurance on their own. They've been able to do so, so I'm happy to be presenting these items to you today. Been vetted by our RTAA insurance broker, and we're happy to say that they've complied with all of the additional requests that we had to ask of them this year. So with that, we're looking to enter into a 9-month commercial hangar and ground lease with them, as well as grant the license for the 2022 September air races. And just kind of an overview of what they lease up at Stead. You can see the red boxes are actual hangars, and then the yellow boxes are ground leases with various property on them that we own or they lease from us. And nothing's really changed with that. They're pretty stable over the years. So the total revenue impact or fiscal impact for this is $192,672. I don't know why it's tongue twister today. So pretty normal. No increase in the event license, and we hope to have them back onto a regular cycle going forward if we can have the insurance issues fully resolved going forward. We'll see where that goes. The insurance market's just been kind of difficult the last couple of years especially, so we'll see where that goes. But with that, that's it. Hereby move that the board authorize the president CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 9-month commercial hangar and ground lease and negotiate final terms and execute a 2022 special event license with Reno Air Racing Association located at the Stead Airport with a total combined minimum contract value of $192,672. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
I'm thinking it probably said it in the staff report, so bear with me. But so RARA was able to raise the funds to pay for the additional insurance, or are they still attempting to raise the funds?
I believe they are able to pay for them. They had some excess funds because they actually had a decent year last year for a variety of different reasons. I'm not aware of the particulars of how they plan to, but they have obtained the insurance. That much I do know.
Great.
Griffin?
I will add a little more to that, and thank you for the question. I was going to bring it up anyways. They have provided proof of insurance to us that met the requirements of our broker, which means they've worked out the financial arrangement to do that. I have been contacted by members of their board, and the fundraising is still critically important to them. I think they basically have used the cash they had in the bank to go get that insurance, which means they have no cash at this point. And so I know they have made the rounds with Washoe County and RSCVA, and I'm not sure where else they're trying to fundraise, but they were very clear that they're still looking for $500,000 of fundraising effort. Otherwise, they're effectively in a hole. So we talked about that. It was, I certainly understand where they're coming from. We were glad that they were able to secure the insurance and provide the required documents to us, but I think they still have a significant financial challenge here.
Fortunate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know I saw them on some list of people funding. I can't recall what the, it was.
County, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Trustee Rose?
So if they don't find the funding through this additional fundraising effort, will they proceed with the event, or will they end up backing out?
The event is happening this
No
year,
matter
no matter
what.
what.
Okay,
They have
perfect.
made their commitments to their concessionaires, their racers, and everything. I think the concern is if they end up in a deficit position, what's that mean for next year? And that's why the fundraising is so critical to them. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Anybody else? I will then entertain a motion to approve item 2022-55.
Okay, it is my pleasure. It's such an important event to our community. I move that the board authorize our committee authorize President and CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 9-month commercial hangar and ground lease and negotiate final terms and execute a 2022 special event license with Reno Air Racing Association, Inc., located at the Reno Stead Airport with a total combined minimum contract value of $192,672.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.3, Board Memo 8/2022-56, authorization for the President CEO to execute a 5-year agreement for the common use passenger processing system at the Reno Tahoe International Airport with SITA, Information Networking Computing USA, Inc., in the total amount of $1,031,540, reflecting 3 purchasing actions: an administratively approved purchase of $160,070 for kiosks, initial hardware, printers, peripherals, Cups Flex technology and installation, a previous board-approved purchase of $449,190 for additional hardware, Cups technology, 8 months of support and services to continue the implementation of the Cups technology, and an additional expenditure of $422,280 for maintenance, support, shipping cost, HP price increase, and network equipment. And we have Mr. Art Remp here.
Good morning. I think that holds the record for the longest motion. Good morning, Chair Gianoli, President Griffin, trustees, Ms. Morgan, staff members, and members of the public. For the record, Art Remp, Chief Information Officer for the Airport Authority. And the purpose of my presentation is to, as was stated, to execute a 5-year agreement with SITA for a CUPS hardware and software system. And what we want to do is bundle all the administrative actions that have taken place over the last couple of months and board actions into one agreement with SITA. This is exempt from competitive bidding. SITA is already an existing vendor with us, and this is for hardware and software. And this supports all of the strategic priorities of the Airport Authority, including facilities for the future. So some background. So in April, the RTA completed an assessment that recommended implementation of a shared use or common use technology, and this was part of the ticket hall expansion. So that the assessment actually began in January as we were starting to look at the design for the ticket hall and what we were going to need to do to move airlines around the ticket counters as we tear up the floors and things. And it was determined common use is the solution. And we were looking at about a 12-month or 15-month time frame to implement that. During this same time frame, in the spring, in May, the board approved the fiscal year 23 budget that included the budget for shared use at $2.5 million. During this same time frame in the spring, Spirit Airlines was inspecting here, looking at RNO to start flights August 10th, and everything was on track with that. But then June 21st, key date, we got a phone call from Spirit that said, you know, we really need common use because of our business model. We need common use in order to be most efficient. And if for us to put it in, it's going to be cost prohibitive to bring in kiosks, and that was what they really wanted. The key was the kiosks, because that helps with their passenger experience and the passenger flow. And for the cost for them to do that would be prohibitive, knowing that sometime down the road it was just going to all get torn out. So 2 days later, June 23rd, a lot happened in that 48 hours. We got on the phone with Spirit, CETA, the RTAA, and also Barish, left them off here. But we came together with a plan, and we committed to implementing a project that typically takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months to do it in less than 45 days. Huge commitment from every organization, but everybody got on board together. So on June 23rd, we kicked it off. The first thing we needed was kiosks. And so we did an administrative action on June 30th to purchase 4 kiosks for $65,000. And then we also needed computers for the ticket counters and the gates, which is an additional $94,000. So there were 2 administrative actions done in June that totaled $160,000. Then, so we called that we call Spirit Phase 1B, or 1A, of the $2.5 million. So this was Phase 1A. So in July, we came to the board and were approved to purchase the remaining computers because we didn't want to just stop with taking care of Spirit's needs. The project was to not only do 3 ticket counters, but to expand that out to 15 ticket counters, not just 2 gates, but 9 gates, not just 4 kiosks, but 8 kiosks. So the board action July 14th was to approve that. And things have just happened so quickly that we're now ready to execute an agreement with CETA for the full 5 years of support and continuing forward. Phase 1 really started earlier than was planned. There was financial and logistical benefits to doing that first board action that now we need to come back and just bundle it all back together. I need to stop here and just comment on a few things that happened in this project. This was a teamwork that couldn't have happened unless everybody fully committed. So our Common Use Committee, led by Adam Tennant from Properties and Hassan Azam from Air Service Development, were key to helping us move this project along. We also had Diana Oldag from CETA, who was our account executive. She got on board and rallied her troops around helping us to do this and getting the resources we needed, including hardware and stuff out of their inventories. Samuel Ingalls from Barish, Barish is working on our IT master plan. He was key because of his common use knowledge. And then Tim Archer from Spirit Airlines, he's the Director of Airport Affairs. He was key to bringing Spirit in. Every day for the last 45 days, we've had an 8 a.m. phone call where we're all on talking about what needs to be done that day. And just, I can't overstate it enough, what a great team this was to pull together to accomplish something that's never been done in the industry as far as we're aware of, anywhere in the world, to do common use implementation in under 45 days. So great teamwork. Here's an example of that. This, if you imagine 45 days ago, was just a piece of carpet. We installed monitors. These are monitors that 2 hours before the flight, it displays the airline logo here, and then the on the monitor on the left, and then the destination city on the right with the weather, things that you would expect to see. There was some out of the box thinking of finding this gate counter We repurposed it from another area, and then did a quick purchase on a gate podium so that we can board passengers there. Just great work from everybody to think out of the box of how can we do this. And then this is an example of what it looks like behind the ticket counter. There's 4 printers down here. One's for boarding passes and one for bag tags. So 2 agents can work on each side. So the discussion. So as I mentioned before, the board action we're looking for is to bundle all the prior administrative actions and the board action from July into one single agreement with 60 months of support from CETA. So the amount not previously approved by the board's $422,280, and that makes a total contract value of $1,031,540. And just so you're aware, in coming months, we've purchased this is for the purchase of the hardware for the computer systems. We still are going to need millwork, maybe some other infrastructure and things, and that'll be separate board actions that we'll come and discuss that. CETA company background, as mentioned before, they're already a vendor with us. They do all of our FIDS displays, you know, all the airline, when you see the departure and arrival displays, that's the CETA system, also our PA system overhead announcements and that. So they're an existing vendor with us. And they're located, our local offices out of Oakland. Some fiscal impact, kind of already mentioned it, but just one more time. Full disclosure, we had prior administrative actions of $160,000, the prior board action of $449,000. A new board action is for $442,000, making a total budget of $1,031,540. And this is included in that shared use budget project. So the motion is, if you'd like me to read it again, I will. Chair.
Stated earlier.
Chair Dino stated. Thank you. I'd be willing to take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really quite a task that you completed, and as you said, I think your whole team deserves. It's amazing what you can do sometimes when there's fire at your heels. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment. I'm sitting here feeling so proud of the airport team, and I think it beautifully you kind of talked about the teamwork, and in addition to that, what I'm hearing is that can-do attitude, because you wouldn't have moved to step 1 if the team hadn't said, hey, wait a minute, let's just try this. And I'm sure it's been quite consuming for the past couple of months. But again, it makes me very proud that it's not, we can't do it, it's how can we achieve this? So congratulations, very good work.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. And yeah, the staff, everybody has pulled together so well. You're right. I went to bed on June 23rd and woke up and it was July 31st.
Kind of a blur.
Also, the commitment to being as transparent as possible. It could have just been yet another agenda item, but to bundle it together so we're all able to connect the dots with really what this project will cost. So thank you.
Trustee Rose?
I do have a question, but I'm going to start by just seconding what Trustee Cunningham said. That's the beautiful thing about little smaller companies, little smaller airports. We can move on a dime, and love the can-do attitude, and the transparency's huge, huge, huge. But I do have a question. In my paperwork, it speaks about an HP price increase. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
Was that from the first 400 that we approved to now, or?
Yeah, and so I've got a supporting slide here that breaks down that 422,000. So from the time that we did the original administrative action to when we were actually received the equipment, there was a shipping surcharge added, as is happening with everyone, freight charge. And then there was an HP increase of price of equipment of $5,000.
It's minimal, so I'm not going to talk
Minimal.
about it anymore, but I was just wondering if we had locked our price in and then they tried to increase it, but that doesn't sound like that's not what happened.
No, it was very minimal.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I had that question.
Yeah, they don't normally do that once you've,
Once you commit.
they've committed to their bid, even if they have a price increase, they'll honor their price, but it's minimal, so I'm not gonna spend any more time on it.
Okay, so thank you again, Art. On that, I won't read that again, but as mentioned, do I have a motion for item 5.3?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again.
Go ahead. Thank you, Art. I just want to thank Trustee Cunningham. You nailed it. We're incredibly proud of this team. You know, we were on the timeline that most airports are on because we know we have a long-term need for common use here. And when you have an airline that comes in and basically tells you it's the only way we're coming in, it really mobilizes the forces. This will be a tremendous benefit to us as we work through the ticketing hall impacts and then ultimately the concourse redevelopment. Common use isn't something that has existed at this airport, but it exists at many. And almost every airline operates on that platform, even if they don't tell you that they want to, they do. And so it is going to provide so much value to us and flexibility and moving airlines around as there's construction impacts throughout the terminal. So a huge thank you to our team for getting it done so quickly. Well-deserved recognition, and we are looking for ways to really honor this team and use this as an example of what we're capable of when the business demands it. Thank you.
Very good job.
We'll move on to item 6, member comments, questions, and requests for agenda items. Do I have any? Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just recognize that you are serving as the chair of this meeting, despite the fact that the agenda went out with Jennifer Rose, because the board in July elected you as the treasurer, and by our bylaws, this one office and this one chairmanship is automatic once you're elected treasurer. So that is a difference that we will find in this particular committee from the next committee with planning.
All right, then. We're all legal. Always good to have. Then we'll move on to item 7, the monthly administrative reports. Does anyone have any questions on those? They were very interesting, and numbers are good. Yes. No questions? Okay. If not, then do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Then we will adjourn. And Trustee Sperber, how much time do you want?
I don't see how long. Do we know how? If you can do it. Perfect. Welcome back. You know, you're almost back.
Recording stopped.